Reputation on the street, which was a shooter or a hitter or an assassin. She was known to her rivals. She was thought to have committed at least 15 shootings.
Fawn didn't kill Kai, period. And I ain't saying that because Fawn didn't kill Kai. I got shot too, I was right there.
What did you see the news report say? When it came out, Vaughn killed K.I. I was the first person that Vaughn saw after he killed K.I. Spot on.
When the bullet hit, it was so powerful, she fell on the step.
This is Gakira Barnes, a 17-year-old girl from the south side of Chicago who the streets called K.I. And on April 11th, 2014, a few hours after she posted a photo of herself chilling on her front porch, someone used that photo to find her and shot her 9 times. But before we get to that afternoon, let me take you all the way back to where this story really begins. Gakira Barnes was born on January 21st, 1997, in the Woodlawn neighborhood on Chicago's South Side. If you have never been to Woodlawn, just understand that it is one of those places where violence is not something that happens every now and then. It is just part of daily life, something you are surrounded by before you are old enough to understand what it means. By 2013, Chicago had recorded over 400 murders in a single year, most of them connected to gang activity, and Woodlawn was right in the middle of all of that. Gakira never even got the chance to know her father. He was shot and killed on Easter Sunday of 1997, just a couple of months after she was born, in a situation that started as a regular fistfight and ended with the other man coming back with a gun. Her mother, Chantel Brown, was left on her own to raise Gakira and her siblings in a modest home near 63rd Street and St. Lawrence Avenue. She shared space with her grandmother and did what she could to keep the family together.
K.I.'s father died just a few months after she was born, correct?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
This happened Easter Sunday, 1997.
Right.
He was gunned down in front of his home.
Right.
Okay. Can you tell us the type of guy K.I.'s father was?
He was a decent guy, you know what I'm saying? He really ain't bother nobody, you know, unless somebody bother him. But, you know, kind of got caught up in that street stuff, you know, in his area and that little gang stuff, you know. Word was he got down on a nigga, you know what I'm saying, fist fighting. The nigga couldn't take the ass whooping, you know what I'm saying, came back blasting. You know, so, you know, with that happening, it just kind of, you know what I'm saying, put a hole in me a little bit, you know. So yeah, and then, you know, it was Easter Sunday, you know what I'm saying. I had took the kids, you know, to some family members earlier that day. I was gonna take them back over to him, and then, you know, I got a phone call saying, you know, this so-and-so, we need you down at Cook County Hospital, you know, so yeah, that happened a couple months later.
Growing up without a father, losing 2 close childhood friends to gunfire, and watching the violence around her play out year after year, that was just Gakira's everyday life. But if you had met her as a little kid, you wouldn't have seen any of what was coming. The people who knew her back then described a smart, sweet, funny girl, the type of daughter that her mother had to basically force into dresses because she would rather be outside with her brothers, jumping off garage roofs and climbing over fences, getting her Easter dress dirty 5 minutes after putting it on.
Man, K.I. was a sweet child. She always been like a tomboy though, because she had 2 big brothers. So if they was jumping off the roof, she gonna jump off the roof too, you know what I'm saying? Put on the Easter dress, come back in, it's looking like I got it from the rummage sale, you know, rolling around in the dirt, like I say, jumping off garages, jumping over fences, you know. So she was real sweet. She was a sweet girl, but she was just kind of tomboyish, you know. She ain't like ponytails and barrettes and stuff like that. I used to make her, you know what I'm saying, put on skirts and dresses, but she was so tomboyish, you know what I'm saying, she couldn't really get that up out of her. But yeah, as a young child, she was real sweet. She was smart. You know, she went to like prestigious schools. You know what I'm saying? I paid money per year for my kids to go to these certain schools. So, you know what I'm saying? She was real smart, like knowledgeable about a lot of stuff. You know, some stuff I probably would have never figured out in my grammar school or high school days. But she was real smart girl.
Right.
Real smart. Pretty too.
Yeah.
Pretty too.
Yeah, for
I used
sure.
to tell her, you a pretty girl, but you an ugly boy, you know. So we used to joke about that.
Yeah.
When she put on her little Timbs and her button ups, and you know, I used to be like, man, I don't like that look, but as a female, you know what I'm saying, you top notch. Something like your mama, you know.
Right.
In the fall of 2010, Gakira enrolled at Perspective/IIT Math and Science Academy for 8th grade, a charter school on the South Side. Her assistant principal, Tiffany Harmston, remembered her as a shy girl at first, someone who would come in and ask for help with her math work, who stayed out of fights and by the end of the school year had made real friends and started to open up. Harmston told reporters she had sat down with Gakira and told her the goal was to get a quality education and eventually go to college. At home, Gakira even talked about wanting to become a social worker someday, someone who could help other people stuck in the same situation she was dealing with every day. That version of her story didn't last long at all. Her first year of high school, her school attendance started dropping off. Then, in 2011, when she was just 14 years old, she was arrested for shooting a firearm. No weapon was ever found, and the witnesses who had identified her later changed their stories, so the case was dropped. A judge still ordered her into an alternative school connected to a juvenile detention center, not as a punishment exactly, because the streets around her were getting more dangerous, and the court was trying to keep her away from the worst of it. That plan didn't work out the way anyone hoped, because around that same time, Gakira was being pulled into something much bigger. Local boys in the neighborhood were putting her onto the Gangster Disciples St. Lawrence faction, also known as Flyboy Gang, FBG, or STL EBT, depending on who was talking. This crew ran a roughly 20-block stretch near 63rd Street and Martin Luther King Jr. Drive, and they were deep in a war with the rival Black Disciples from Parkway Gardens, a neighborhood that was getting its new name around that same time. That name came from blood. In January of 2011, a 15-year-old named Shondell Tuka Gregory was shot multiple times at a bus stop and killed. He was close to Gakira's circle, someone her people treated like family. Then, in August of that same year, a Black Disciples member named O.D. Perry was shot and killed, and his block named themselves after him to keep his memory alive. That's how O-Block got its name. And according to the streets, the person who pulled the trigger on OD was 14-year-old Gakira Barnes, allegedly hitting back for what happened to Tuka. Nothing was ever proven in court, but that reputation would follow her for the rest of her short life. Her mother had started noticing the changes around age 12, and by 14 or 15, she felt like it was already beyond her reach to pull Gakira back.
I want to say maybe at about age 12, I started seeing like a change, you know what I'm saying? Change in appearance, change in the group she was hanging with, change in the music she was listening to. You know, a lot of small changes, you know, but when she was, you know, dressed like a boy, you know, put on, you know, or whatever, or start messing with females, I was like, oh, okay, so you trying to go this route, you know what I'm saying? I ain't knock her, you know what I'm saying, for nothing she did. I ain't condone none of it neither. But if your child come to you and say, hey, I want to be this or that, you still gonna love that child. You know, you gonna try and guide them the right way, but you still gonna love them no matter what they turn out to be. You gonna love them regardless. That came from your womb. You know, that was cut from your core, so you gonna love that child regardless.
For sure.
Yeah.
So around 12, you say her appearance started changing, and that's like puberty, you know.
Yeah.
When
Yep.
preteen, you
Yep.
know, a lot of kids start to learn what they really like and what they into, their interests and hobbies.
Yep.
And at this time, K.I. was dressing like a boy. She was, you know, obviously listening to, well, I'm gonna assume listening to a lot of gangster rap.
Yep.
Right. And somehow, some way, she became known as this female assassin, what the Chicago Sun-Times or somebody would call it, right? And major networks like A&E, you know, picked up a story, did a whole documentary on her.
Right.
So like I stated before, this name KI became bigger than some of Chicago rappers, right?
Right.
So for you, after you learned that, this is who she becoming, can you tell us when did it kind of like spiral out of your control to where you was like, okay,
I want to say it started spiraling at about 14, 15. You know what I'm saying? Like, so it started at like 12. So, I used to do stuff like try and get her locked up, take her down to Heart Grove mental institution, keep her for 30 days, try and do stuff like that. Then it kind of got to the point, because the system only can help you so much if they haven't actually done nothing. So kind of like at say like 14, 15, it kind of started getting real rowdy type, like, you know what I'm saying? Where, I ain't gonna say I let her go, but I just kind of stayed prayed up and kind of put it in the Lord's hand. But at the same time, she was a child that was coming home every night. So I would talk to her, mention like, hey, this going on in the streets, this, that, and the other, and when she got to about that age, I want to say like 15-ish or so, that's when she got that I don't give a fuck attitude.
Okay.
So before then, it was kind of like I care, but like 14, 15, I think she took a couple hard L's, you know what I'm saying?
She lost
Lost a couple good friends, like brothers she grew up with.
Right.
And she kind of just like with that, she kind of was like, I don't give a fuck. Like, that's it. You know what I'm saying? Ain't no more love. And, she loved her family. But as far as being out there, it was like, I don't give a fuck. Mm-hmm. Whatever happened. Like, and I used to be like, girl, I don't want to bury you. And, you know what I'm saying? This, that, and other. And so-and-so just got killed. And don't be, But, she had got it made up within herself. Like, that's it. I don't give a fuck. She had them couple L's she took kind of like 2-3 hard L's, you know what I'm saying, with losing a couple of the guys in the hood. And that really shook her. Like, it changed her.
Those losses her mother is describing were very real. In June of 2012, Taekwon Tyler, a 13-year-old kid that Gakira treated like her own little brother, was shot and killed by a stray bullet while he was leaving a party. After that happened, Gakira changed her Twitter name to @TaekwonAssassin and started filling her page with promises of revenge. The girl who used to talk about being a social worker was gone, and the person who replaced her had decided she didn't care what happened to her anymore. Between 2011 and 2014, the police suspected Gakira being involved in anywhere from 3 to 5 shootings, with at least one of them being a murder, but they could never make a charge stick. Witnesses would identify her and then change their stories, and without physical evidence, the cases kept falling apart. Out on the streets, though, the numbers people were throwing around were nothing like 3 to 5. People were saying 15, 20 bodies, maybe more. Community activist Andrew Holmes said families of victims kept coming to him pointing at Gakira as the shooter or the getaway driver in drive-bys, and he had even seen pictures of her wearing a shirt that said CPK, which stood for CP Killer. Researchers who studied this story later noted that in gang culture, the real numbers and the street rumors tend to mix together until nobody can really separate them. So those bigger figures should be taken with caution, but even the smaller number that law enforcement believed was enough to make Gakira one of the most feared people in that whole area. She went by 2 names at that point. K.I. was the main one, the other was Lil Snoop, which came from a character on the TV show The Wire, a quiet, ruthless female shooter who just handled business without a lot of noise. That nickname alone tells you everything about how her community saw her by that point in her life. In 2010, she appeared on camera in FBG's music video for a song called Murda, waving a handgun like it was nothing. She wasn't hiding from the camera or being careful, she was putting her whole reputation on display for anyone watching, and a lot of people were watching. And that brings us to Twitter, because Gakira's online presence was massive for someone her age with no record deal or fame in the traditional sense. From 2011 all the way to her death in April 2014, she put out 27,000 tweets, and by the time she died, she had 2,585 followers, putting her in the 98th percentile of all Twitter users at the time. That's a serious number for a teenager from Woodlawn with no record deal or fame in the traditional sense. What she posted ranged from raw grief about the friends she had lost, to direct threats aimed at rivals and police, to references that told anyone paying attention exactly which blocks she claimed and which people she was connected to. In 2016, a research team from Columbia University went back and studied 408 of her final tweets, everything she posted between March 29th and April 17th, 2014, and they broke down what they found into three main categories: direct threats, grief that turned into rage, and what they called internet banging, which is basically online taunting that heats up real-world conflicts. What that study found was that her posts weren't just words on a screen, they were feeding the cycle of violence between her group and their rivals, keeping the fire going, and blurring the line between what was beef online and what was about to become actual gunfire in the street. Every threat she posted was a signal, every location reference was basically a map. Then, on March 29, 2014, her friend Rawson Lil B. Powderson was shot and killed by police. After that happened, her Twitter activity went into a different gear entirely. The grief was louder, and so were the threats. People close to her noticed a change in those final weeks, something that felt like she wasn't trying to be careful anymore, like she had stopped thinking about consequences. Her mother had seen this coming from a distance, and she had tried everything she could think of to reach her. Now,
Give a fuck. She had them couple L's she took. She took kind of like 2-3 hard L's, you know what I'm saying, with losing a couple of the guys in the hood. And that really shook her. Like, it changed her to kind of turned her heart cold towards everything out there. So, you know, I can kind of understand with losing somebody close and you love, and you know what I'm saying. So when that happened, it was just like that put her in a mad state of just not giving a fuck about that street shit.
what her mother didn't know on the morning of April 11, 2014, was that Gakira had posted a photo of herself and her friends sitting outside on a porch just a few blocks from home. Researchers who studied that case later pointed to that tweet specifically, noting that the photo made her location easy to identify for anyone who knew the neighborhood. In a place like Woodlawn, where everybody knows which block is whose and who is at war with who, putting your exact location on the internet is a different kind of risk than it would be anywhere else. It's not just a photo, it's an open invitation. A few hours after that post went up, at around 3:30 in the afternoon, Gakira was walking with two friends in the 6400 block of South Eberhart Avenue, just 3 blocks from her house, when a person in a hood came up and opened fire. Both of the men with her were hit too, but investigators were confident from the beginning that Gakira was the main target. Her close friend, FBG Butter, was right there when it happened. He took one bullet to the leg that shattered his kneecap and tore through his ACL, and because he was on parole, he refused to go to the hospital, almost bleeding out at home while his people tried to patch him up. He eventually came forward and described what it was like to be standing right there.
She got shot 9 times. You got shot once in the leg.
I had an artificial kneecap, bro, to my ACL, shot at my knee bone.
And you actually saw her getting shot those 9 times.
I was trying to run, bro. Trying to get away, bro. You know what I'm saying? Motherfuckers putting that fire on you, shorty. I ain't really trying to watch nothing else that's going on. I'm trying to see what's in front of me so I can go. So, bro, anything behind me mean I'm dying.
But you're hearing the gunshots go off.
Yeah, of course, you know.
You get hit in the leg.
Yeah.
When do you realize that she gets hit?
At the end, when I come off the side of the gangway, from off the other side of the house, I'm limping up the street. I see Kyra. That shit was fucked up, shorty. That shit was crazy as hell. Bro.
Because that's your sister.
That shit was crazy. Cause she was like, "You hit?" I'm like, "Yeah." She, "What?" I'm in my leg. "Oh, you hit?" She like, "Yeah." Well, she like,
Oh, she was still talking at that point.
"Yeah."
Oh.
She was still conscious, still talking. Butter said when he got to her, she pointed to the wound on her neck and told him that was the one that hurt. She was rushed to Northwestern Memorial Hospital and pronounced dead at 5:43 p.m. that evening. Police recovered 14 shell casings at the scene and had no suspect in custody.
Going war and we don't know what for.
For Chantel Brown, the statistics are more than just numbers. Within 12 short hours across Chicago, 14 people were wounded, 2 people killed, one of them being Brown's oldest child.
I'm just gonna miss her presence. She was a very, very beautiful, well-known, lovely girl.
17-year-old Gakira Barnes loved basketball, her friends, and being with family.
I love her, and I'm gonna fight for her to have justice, because I don't think it's fair that we're losing our kids being gunned down every day in the streets.
It's still under investigation what exactly happened Friday afternoon in the 6400 block of South Eberhard, but neighbors say Barnes and a friend were walking along the sidewalk when a gunman started firing.
When the bullet hit, it was so powerful she fell on the step.
Residents who do not want to be identified say Barnes fought to live, but had been shot at least 9 times.
In the jaw, in the neck, and in the chest, and in the leg. 9 times, they said.
Barnes was transported to Northwestern where she died, and tragically for this neighborhood, it wasn't the first child lost to gunfire.
I wanted to cry because I had 2 children that had been murdered. So I know how that mother feels.
Gakira's mother and several other organizations have collectively put together a $10,000 reward for the person who brings forward the information that leads to an arrest and a conviction. This case is ongoing. No one is in custody as of yet. From Woodlawn, I'm Emily Flores, NBC 5 News.
Her mother had watched her walk out the door 2 hours before that call came in.
And you know, the night before she came in, we talked, laughed. She got up that day. I was doing something with my younger children, and before she left me that afternoon, my final time seeing her, as I'm watching her walk away, I didn't know then, but I know now, it was the Holy Ghost coming over me. But the Lord, He informed me that was gonna be that would have been the last time seeing her alive. And then 2 hours later, when I got the phone call, I just knew. I just knew, because when I felt that feeling before she left, I told her I love you, gave her a kiss, hug. Don't be standing outside. Main thing, don't be standing outside in no corners, on no porches, in no crowds, with no people, with no.
After Gakira died, the investigation went cold fast. There were no arrests, no charges, and no public answers for years. But her mother said she never actually needed the police to tell her what happened, because there were about 20 people standing on that block when the shots went off, and word travels fast in a neighborhood like Woodlawn.
I had already knew who was responsible from everybody being out there, because she wasn't the only one that was out there. It was like 20 people on the scene. So from jump, I had knew who it was. The internet and the world ain't know who it's supposed to be in, allegedly, until FBI dropped the files, public record. But in the beginning, I knew, my you know what I'm saying, I don't have no hatred or none of that towards nobody. You know what I'm saying? I don't feel either way swayed about it, because losing a child, period, at whatever point of age or however, it's hurt. You know what I'm saying? My heart goes out to the mother, and the family and the kids, because they the ones, gonna be affected by it.
The rest of the world had to wait until July of 2021, when Chicago Police Department documents were unsealed and a name was officially connected to the shooting. That name was Davon Bennett, who the whole world knew as King Von. Now, before we get into what those documents said, you need to understand who King Von was in this story, because it is not random at all. King Von was a rapper from O Block, the same neighborhood that was named after O.D. Perry, the man that the streets say Gakira killed back in 2011. He was a Black Disciples affiliate and one of the most talked about young artists coming out of Chicago drill. He was also already dead by the time those police documents came out. He had been shot and killed in Atlanta in November of 2020 during a fight outside a nightclub, which meant he could never be charged or tried for any of this. According to the unsealed CPD report, a person in a gray hoodie and blue jeans walked up to Gakira's group on South Eberhart Avenue, opened fire, and ran to a waiting vehicle. Multiple witnesses positively identified that person as King Von. The Cook County State Attorney's Office looked at everything and decided not to file charges, saying the witness statements had too many inconsistencies and that the evidence was not strong enough to prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt, which is the legal standard you need in court. But the story did not stop there. In August of 2020, FBG Duck, whose real name was Carlton Weekly, was shot 16 times outside a store in Chicago's Gold Coast neighborhood while he was shopping for his son's birthday. Federal prosecutors who brought that case described it as a direct continuation of the same war Gakira had been a part of years before, and in January of 2024, 6 O Block members were convicted on federal racketeering charges and sentenced to life. Gakira's name came up in those proceedings, with prosecutors pointing to her and King Von as key figures in the conflict that eventually led to FBG Duck's murder, making clear that the violence that took her life at 17 had consequences that stretched far beyond that one afternoon in Woodlawn. According to that filing, Gakira's own brother had told federal investigators that he was standing right there when it happened, that he saw King Von standing over her sister after she fell, still firing, and that Von also shot at him as he tried to get away. That testimony was not part of a criminal case against Von specifically, but it was entered into federal record as context for the larger war between these two factions. Legally speaking, the question of who killed Gakira has never been settled in a court. King Von was never charged, never tried, and is no longer alive. But those documents show that investigators had a clear picture of what they believed happened, and the people closest to Gakira had that same picture from day one.
I honestly had, before the untimely death of the person, I honestly had forgave the person in my heart. You know, I used to tell people I ain't mad at my daughter, I ain't mad at the killer, I ain't mad at nobody. You know, this is, this life. It's a sad, situation and, circumstance, but it's life. Like, so I wasn't mad. I didn't feel me holding hatred in my heart, what helped me to heal.
What actually got under Gakira's mother's skin was not the name in the documents. It was seeing the person she believed killed her daughter laughing about it on television in a documentary that aired on A&E before any of this was official public knowledge.
The documentary, the person was in the documentary.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And I'm like, that's crazy. Like, then now that part kind of pissed me off a little bit.
That had to tweak you out,
that
right?
Now, I ain't gonna lie. That right there, that part, it kind of pissed me off. Kind of like, you know what I'm saying? Because it was like at the time, a person was laughing about it. You know what I'm saying? Like, trying to act like they wasn't involved in it. It was just like, now that part pissed me off. But, because at first, when they was like, it's a documentary coming out, you know what I'm saying? Because A&E ain't reach out to me about it.
Okay.
So that's why I wasn't involved. So whoever they talked to, that's who they reached out to. But my number ain't changed in 15 years. So I don't know why not. But, they was like, yeah, it's a documentary coming out. So at first I didn't want to watch it because I was like, you know what I'm saying? So it took me a while, but I watched it all the way through. And when I did, and I synced that portion of it, I just was like, you got to be bullshitting me.
She's talking about King Von appearing in that documentary and appearing to joke about Gakira, talking about her in a way that her mother felt was disrespectful to someone who was no longer here to defend herself. That was the part she said hit different from everything else. FBG Butter, who was actually standing there when Gakira got shot, has given two very different stories over the years. In one clip, he came out and said King Von had nothing to do with it.
Von didn't kill Kai. Period. And I ain't saying that because Von didn't kill Kai. I got shot too. I was right there. I got shot too. I saw the motherfucker who popped us. He did. On first grade. And there was some grown niggas in A-Ski on first grade. V-Roy ain't had shit to do with that shit, folks. That shit a facade, but you gotta think about it though. Von took credit for a lot of murders.
But then there is this other clip from someone on the other side of the beef who tells a completely different story.
I said that Von killed K.I. What did you see the news report say? When it came out, Von killed K.I. This my dog, this my mans. I was the first person that Von saw after he killed K.I. Spot on. The nigga just came off doing a hit and I seen him.
Regardless of who actually fired those shots, what is clear is that Gakira died in the middle of a war that did not end when she was buried. That same feud kept going for years through more shootings and more funerals until it swallowed some of the biggest names in Chicago drill.
It's going on 10 years, with my daughter, but I think with a lot of mothers that lose their children this way or to the streets, period, you don't really get a grieving process.
Whether you read her story as a tragedy, a cautionary tale, or proof of what happens when a community gets caught in a cycle of violence it didn't choose, all of those things are true at the same time.
Her mom said she was a smart kid. She was kind of shy, even timid, some people said. I talked to people at the school who said it took a while for her to warm up to her classmates and to her teachers, but and she had some initial discipline problems at the beginning and she got suspended. But after that, she was a good student, they said. So she graduated her 8th grade at Perspectives IIT Math and Science Academy. She went back there for her freshman year and things just did not work out. She had a really spotty attendance record. And the next thing you know, according to her mother, she was arrested for shooting a gun and wound up going into the juvenile justice system, and she essentially never really was a full-time student again. Compare that reputation as a shy, timid girl with her reputation on the street, which was a shooter or a hitter or an assassin. She was known to her rivals as somebody who was willing to shoot first, ask questions later. It's all over the internet. In fact, on her own Twitter site, she called herself Taekwon Assassin. Taekwon was a friend of hers who was killed, and she vowed to avenge his death. So female shooters and gangs are super rare. However, the significance of this story is that girls are becoming more and more involved in gangs and in violence, but it's usually with their hands and feet and not with firearms. So she was very unusual in that way. The estimates of how much damage she did varied depending on who you talked to. A high-level source I talked to said that a girl matching her description was a suspect in 3 to 5 shootings. One of those was a murder. I talked to other sources who are closer to the streets, and those people say that she was thought to have committed at least 15 shootings. Either way you cut it, it was not a one-time thing with her, according to these sources. The police, last time they had contact with her, and they saw Gakira in an alley near 63rd and King Drive, which is kind of the borderline between her gang and another rival gang. And they thought that it was really unusual for her to be there. She was really putting herself at risk. She could have gotten shot there. And so one of the officials got out of the car and talked to her and offered her help, and she politely refused and she walked away. 2 months later, she was dead.
What do you think about this murder case? Is the gang war even worth the many lives that get cut short? Drop your thoughts in the comments and let us know what you think. Click on one of the cards on your screen to see more videos like this. See you in the next one.